Welcome to the Chaplains Chat, and we are thrilled to be here at Church of the Beatitudes today, chatting with the Reverend Dr. Tony Minear at Church of the Beatitudes. And Andrew and I thought that it would be cool to get a chance to connect with you and find out how things are going here at church and in the life of the community. And of course, we have many of our residents who are members here, and so just kind of tell us how things are going, Tony. And
well, as you can tell right now, it's empty. I mean, literally, that is the essence of what I think we're feeling right now, is this sense of emptiness. It's Friday, but it's supposed to be when we just finished recording, and so I preached to an empty building.
Right, we've been doing that too. It's strange. It's hard. It's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, I find myself becoming more critical of myself as I'm speaking.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When we've been recording and this is letting you into a secret here behind the scenes, we've been so much more critical about what we've been doing, and we've been having to remind ourselves that ordinarily on a Sunday, it's one take.
Yeah. Exactly.
And we don't get a second go-round.
Exactly.
And we have to do it.
Or a third, or a fourth.
Well, now you're really letting people into what's going on. But yeah, it's just, empty is a good word.
Yeah.
Literally, but also figuratively.
And just trying to do our Bible studies.
Right.
Speaking on Zoom to each other, or even sometimes in person.
When we've done it in person.
When we've usually had 20 people around the table, and we miss that participation.
Right.
And
and we do Zooms twice a week, and again, it's just not the same. We're probably averaging anywhere from 15 to 20 people that will Zoom in with us, but it's still not the same to be able to actually see them. Now, the one cool thing about it is we get to see where people live, at least a little box.
You get to see what books they're reading because they're standing in front of their books, right?
But other than that, it's just that one-on-one connection. And I think that's one of the things we had thought about. If the numbers would have stayed down, that we thought about having an in-person gathering. But by the time we realized what that was going to look like, and we did hear from a couple of members say that what they miss is just interacting with each other, and that would be very limited.
Right. What could you do anyway?
Right. So we thought about, right now we can seat about 300 people in here. And so to get 50 people in here, we would be easily able to do physical distancing and all that. But everyone has to wear a mask. Everyone has to stay that physical distance apart. You bring them in one way, you have them exit another way. You don't let them stand around and talk in the foyer. And now with the heat the way it is, people aren't going to want to stay around. And what we were hearing from people is a big part of church is that sense of connection that they get with each other.
Absolutely.
And so that's one of the things that we took in consideration. But once the numbers took off, and the
numbers of cases we're talking about.
And the percentage of positive tests. We were, I think, at one point we were like 5 or 6, and now we're up to almost over 12 now. And so
as of today.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's not good news. So that's the challenge. But I think the opportunity that we're having right now is through the digital format, being able to reach people that we would not have been able to reach before.
True. So, yeah, that's very true. I was watching the other day, evening prayer from Canterbury Cathedral back home, right? And I thought, oh gosh, this is such a tonic. It's because I was supposed to go back to Britain this summer for a visit, and of course haven't been able to go. And so I watched that on YouTube, and I thought, oh gosh, that was so nice. And then I noticed that 313,000 people had watched that.
Wow.
Now, that was a random Wednesday, in one little, big church, but still. I would say, ordinarily, they might get 3 people attending that service. And yet 313,000 people had viewed that service and had therefore all participated in it and hopefully benefited from it. So you're right. As much as this has brought struggle and distance, it's also brought opportunity.
Right.
In strange ways. In
I
new ways.
agree. And I think that's one of the things that we've been considering is when the day comes when we'll be able to have the in-person meetings again, how do we now blend what we're doing with that again? Because I think the idea that if you just go back to what was, it isn't going to work.
Right.
So I think,
Yeah.
again, how do you maintain a digital presence and digital interaction and yet at the same time have the in-person? So I think that's one of the things that we're considering is what is that going to look like moving forward?
Yeah, we've been having those same conversations at times. We've been saying, well, you know, some of the stuff that we've started doing, even though we wouldn't necessarily have started doing it if the circumstances hadn't forced us to, there's good here. And so what is it going to look like for us going forward? And a while ago, you remember that image which I found and we used in the messenger? It was an image of a tree which had been cut down and a shoot growing out of it. And around the image were the words, "May we grow back not to what we were, but to what we may become." And there's power in that too. It's just difficult to feel that when we're also feeling the loss and the separation of what we yearn for, and so much of that is to be together.
Yeah.
We're thinking of we're going to do a service of loss and grief at some point in the near future, just to recognize the inability we've had to really mourn those that we've lost in our community, and that's not even to say all of the 400,000 people across the country who have passed from COVID, and so I'm looking forward to that opportunity. And again, it will be on TV and not in person, but I think that will allow some recognition of who these people were in our lives, because it'll be a while before we can have in-person celebrations of life.
And that's one of the things that I was talking to a therapist recently, and she mentioned to me that this grieving process is far more than just grieving those that we've physically lost, but that each of us are experiencing losses in different ways. You know, from the graduate who wasn't able to celebrate their graduation,
Exactly.
To the college student, your daughter, who wasn't able to finish maybe her term or finish it the way that she was accustomed. And the people losing jobs. And it really hit me that in our profession, you know, she's right. This is a time of grief. And so I think that's a question that we're asking too, is what does that look like? How do you help people in this grieving process when you literally can't? I mean, here we are in an empty building, so it's safer, but look at how far apart we are from each other.
Right.
I mean, it's
as though we've. Well, I mean, it's the right thing to do, but yeah, I mean, it speaks volumes, and with that loss and with that emptiness, I have found a renewed urgency. When you're talking about, you know, in our profession, I've found a renewed urgency within myself to say, we're separated, so what are the ways that we're united? And, you know, to quote Bill Nelson, you know, to sit here in this place, we should do such a thing, I guess. Yeah. In life, in death, in life beyond death, God is with us. Now, that's not an original quote, but that's something that he said to me many times. You know, that was one of his go-tos. In life, in death, and in life beyond death, God is with us. You know, God is with us in the midst of this time where we feel alone. How do we live that out? How do we...
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the powerful ways that as a society we're seeing that lived out and again, it's the paradox, right? Because one of the ways we're seeing that lived out is by the society as a whole standing up and saying, you can't treat human beings the way that we have when it comes to Black Lives Matter. And we literally are putting our own lives on the line by going out to these protests. So that's the paradox, right? And I think going back to what you were saying is maybe that's how we communicate God is with us, is by saying this is what it means to be a human being. And how there are barriers at times that we have to be willing, and I'm sure I know it has nothing to do with the original context, but it does make me think about that expression, what no one has a greater love than to lay their life down for another. And so to be able to go out and protest and say, look, this is wrong. We can't do this, and put my own life at risk, even though that is nothing compared to what young Black men are continually experiencing. So I think, yeah, you're right. That's very much about how do we make God real for people. And I cannot imagine, because you guys are having to do that literally every day. You are going into people's dwellings, and they trust you enough to let you in, and you have to trust them enough.
Right. It's one of the things we say when we are meeting with new employees at the campus. One of the things that's part of that discussion is that statement that, when we come to work, we are going to work in someone's home. Even those of us who don't necessarily figuratively go in and the housekeeper in the apartment, we're doing stuff on the campus, but the campus is a home, and right now we recognize the difficulties of what it is to live in that home right now, and
And there's so many different layers to the situations and the griefs that people are dealing with. Not only staff who are affected and their families by the virus, but the normal angst and situations that families find themselves in continue to happen.
Yeah, that's all still there.
Yes, that's
right?
all still there.
Normal life,
Right.
which isn't necessarily the easiest thing at the best of times. That's all still there too, if not amplified.
I think
absolutely.
yes.
Yep.
And I think that's to me that word really resonates. Amplified. It's almost as if, and maybe that's part of the grieving process, is because our nerves right now and our emotions are kind of raw, that something that would normally we would be able to let go maybe sits there a little bit longer.
Right.
Or if people are in far closer confine with one another, if a family is used to going to work, or people going to school, college, whatever, and people have been sheltering in place together in one house, and there's not been that sort of cooling off period between regular interactions, which we all kind of need a little bit of space every now and again. That amplifies real normal life as well, and it's
and
tough.
I think we are very fortunate to have the relationship with Beatitudes Campus, and Michelle, Just, and I have talked quite a bit about what you guys are doing, and then trying to complement it here at the church, what is happening at the campus, because I applaud you guys in what you're doing as far as the safety. And I've talked to some of our members that are residents at your campus. And one of the key words I keep hearing again and again is this sense of feeling safe. And so I think that I applaud. And at the same time, what I hear going on at the campus, I think is what I hope will be going on throughout the greater society, and that is a sense of solidarity. I mean, that's what the pandemic is doing right now, I think, is making us realize that this raw individualism that, over the last decades has become so prominent, that, you make it on your own, strive on your own.
Don't worry about the person that's not.
Right.
That's their deal.
Right.
Leave them because, hey, you know what, they're obviously not working hard enough, or something like that.
Yeah, and I think and even raw individualism that is tied into family systems. It's like, okay, so this is my family, so it's me and then my family, but beyond that, everyone's on their own. And I think this pandemic, and also with what happened with George Floyd, has reminded us of this interconnection that we have with each other. And so again, that would be one of the positives that I try to find in the midst of this chaos, is how connected we really are, and can we right now as clergy really emphasize that and then not lose that as we move forward.
Holding on to that.
And and keeping it before people.
Right, and it's often, a prayer I often say in worship at the campus is, we pray that this place, the campus, may shine as a light and example to others of how, I'm paraphrasing now, I don't say it quite like this, but of how to be and of how to do and of how to make God's love real and of how to live together, knowing that can be messy, but that the goal is to grow through being together and getting through the messy bits. And so hopefully the campus continues in its efforts right now to do that, to be a good example. And I know that the leadership and all of the staff and the residents also are a part of that and have a responsibility and a part to play in that. And that's been wonderful to see, to see how we've sort of stood up to that task.
And I think that's one of the more creative aspects that we've been seeing also, is that people have had their jobs totally redefined. We found ourselves doing things that we never thought we would do. The transportation folks that are usually driving residents to appointments have become the post service, didn't they?
Right, Beatitudes. BPS, Beatitudes Parcel Service,
yes,
or Parcel
yes.
Service or something. They've got little T-shirts that may or may not borrow from the UPS logo.
But it's great, and we never thought that we would be trying to produce services and chaplain chats and things like that. So that creative aspect is showing us that we can step outside of our normal bounds or our normal definitions, our roles.
And I think that's one of the challenges that, building off of that idea of creativity. And I love that example you gave about that stump and then the outgrowth.
I'll send you the image.
And what was the words again you said? That
may we grow back not to what we were, but to that which we might become.
And so one of the things that I've heard recently, and I hope they're not true. But there are some individuals I've read who talk about with what's happening with our climate, and that what we are experiencing now may happen more frequent in different ways than what we've experienced since the last one in 1918. And so that's, I think, the good news in the midst of all of that is that we have people like yourselves who are using creativity to come up with ideas, and then those ideas will probably have to carry us forward if we find something like this happen again quicker. And so I think that's, to me, one of the things that you're right, because we've had the same situation occur here with our staff. I mean, we brought in an individual who will help us with the cameras. Our sound person, they have more hours. In some ways, in the conversations with our staff, and I'm curious to see if it's the same for you, our workload has actually increased, not decreased.
Absolutely.
So you find the same
It's
true.
interesting. Somebody was saying to me the other day, well, what are you doing? Like, what could you possibly have to do if the people
but they were
aren't
asking
around?
that before this.
Well, that's
Yeah.
true. They were like, oh, it's Sunday. It's the one day of the week.
that's when you work.
True.
Yeah.
Not true, but yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
would say we have probably almost doubled the tasks that we have to fulfill. Some of them are things that we've taken on to help the communal effort. You know, we've been involved in taking
Temperature
temperatures of staff as they're
station
arriving to work,
Yep.
and visitors and things, and yeah. So I mean, we've done that, but also not only that, but you know, I can tell you that to write a sermon takes a certain amount of time. To write a sermon right now takes a lot longer to try and bear all that stuff in mind. To visit and spend time with people and work through this is a greater task. So yeah, it's busier, absolutely, absolutely busier for us. So, yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yep. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking some time, and Michelle sends her regards to you, and we appreciate the effort that you have put forward with the yard
Yeah.
signs.
Yeah,
yeah. I like
speak
those.
about
Those are
that
really
for a
good.
moment.
Yeah, we had Michelle just on Ruminate, which is a Zoom we do on Sunday mornings at 9 o'clock. And one of the things we wanted to speak about was we hear a lot about those that are elderly. And because of our connection with the campus, we thought this would be a great opportunity for our members to be aware of what's happening. And one of the things I learned in the midst of all of that was this ageism is real. You know, the discrimination based on
This
age.
has raised that totally to the
yeah.
fore.
You
At
know,
the
the idea-
beginning, when people said, "Oh, don't worry, it'll only get old people."
Right.
I mean, what is that?
Oh yeah, and it's basically we can go back and live our lives and just keep the old people, you know, locked away. And it was like, whoa. And I was literally looking at the stats. They're the highest group of individuals, age group, who have been is 20 to 40.
Yep.
And it's not our seniors. So we asked Michelle to come on and talk about that. And then afterwards, we began to realize that what could we do to make people realize that, yes, we do appreciate our essential workers. That's important. But how could we make our community realize that we also value our seniors in our society? And we started talking, Janelle, who does a lot of our PR and is my assistant, she was awesome because she started talking to, and I forget the name of the person on your end.
Barbara Wood.
Yes, and they started having that conversation, and they're the ones that took, you know, I'm so lucky because I can come up with ideas, and then all I have to do is sit back, and they know what to do. It's almost like, get out of the way, Tony, now we'll take it. So it's exciting to be able to have that opportunity to do something
To
together
partner,
as a
yeah.
campus, because even though, you know, legally we are no longer joined together, the reality is the DNA of this church and the DNA of the campus, it's the same. I mean, we're twins. And I think that's what I've valued about having the two of you in my life, is that you guys get what we're about, and I get what you're about, and I don't have that a lot with other institutions.
Well, we value that.
Well,
Likewise.
thank you. Yeah,
Likewise.
and you've got an amazing, you know, Michelle Just, have the utmost respect for her. Your staff is amazing. So you've honored me by letting me be a part of this. So
Well,
thank
we
you.
look forward to maybe some other opportunities
I would love that.
going forward
Would love that.
to share with you, Tony.
Yeah, and we maybe steal you away some Sunday and
There you go.
have you come over here and give me a break.
That would be good.
And then you could take it
And talk to the empty space.
Yeah, talk to the empty space, but
Talk
then
to
you could
this
take
empty
that
space,
and then
right.
maybe, you know, you could share it over there
Use it
too.
that way, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
God bless. Stay safe.